Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. I'm senior health reporter Anjalee Khemlani. America's obsession with weight loss and diabetes drugs has tipped the scales this year. Pharmaceutical companies like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are cashing in on these newer drugs in a class known as GLP1 that could have implications in other sectors for years. Meanwhile, new innovations like CRISPR are having their moment too. So what stocks are hot this year? And how did the healthcare sector perform overall? Joining me as part of Yahoo Finance's Healthcare Week to answer all of that is Geoff Meacham, Senior Analyst at Bank of America. Geoff, great to have you on today. I guess the first—
Hi, Anjalee.
The first question, I guess, is going to obviously have to be Vertex, because they just got approval in the UK for CRISPR. What a momentous occasion. How do you think that this impacts not just the stock, but really the entire class of therapies for next year?
Yeah, great to be with you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, for sure. So the news of the day is obviously the approval of the first gene-edited product for sickle cell and beta thalassemia. It was in the UK, but I do think that later on this year, beginning next, we'll get US approval. The data for this drug is really remarkable. The big question, though, is the commercial piece of it, right? So pricing, reimbursement, access. Given that it's a novel technology, and I think the price point's going to be something in the $1 million, $2 million plus. It's just going to take a little bit of time, I think, to really ramp from a commercial standpoint.
Absolutely. And to your point, still awaiting that U.S. approval. Meanwhile, of course, the other story this year that has really been big is the GLP-1s. And with that approval of Zepbound, this new now weight loss class of drugs has been a pretty big topic of conversation. We've seen Novo enjoy a significant market share this year, as well as the cost of it coming into question and coverage. It's been quite a tumultuous year in that space. How do you think that this plays out for not just for the company, but for Lilly as well?
Yeah, you're totally right. It's been a remarkable year with respect to GLP-1s. I mean, it's probably about 60-70% of my conversations every day are on GLP-1s. And it's not just with healthcare analysts and portfolio managers. It's really consumer folks as well, right? Looking for read-throughs from everything from Walmart to, Coke, et cetera, a lot of consumer facing brands. I still think next year, it's still very, very early innings with regard to adoption. You mentioned Lilly Zepbound, so that was just approved. And so the question will be, what does reimbursement look like? What does access look like? Obviously, having the SELECT trial from Novo's drug Wegovy this past weekend, I think will be a big help. But I think that's going to play a role maybe sometime in a 25 standpoint when you think about broader reimbursement and access through CMS like Medicare, Medicaid.
And we also know, of course, the head-to-head trial that was announced. So that should be really interesting to watch for. And Lilly also providing that lower cost point for Zepbound. All really interesting. And to your point, you've definitely spent a lot of time on this year. You were one of the ones who had a lot to say about what the impact will be for other sectors. We've seen a little bit of pushback on that idea, that it might be, the sky is falling essentially for other food areas, food and beverage. What do you think now, a couple months out, seeing, to your point, the sort of limited patient population that has been impacted so far? Do you still think that this is something that has a long-term, broader impact for other sectors?
I would say I think it will have a long-term, broader impact. Things like, everything from food, beverage, apparel, even med devices. But what I would say, though, is that the next 1 to 2 years, I think should be fine. It should be a normal, market as the GLPs roll out. And all of our conversations, it really ends up being, how many folks are going to be on drug, mostly in the US. And, we have about, one or so on these GLP-1s officially for diabetes today, for obesity today. But if you get to 5 million, in a few years, and that starts to move the needle on, things like volume assumptions. And at the end of the decade, when we have, 25 to maybe 50 million people in the US that will have seen these drugs, that does, really have a pretty significant long-term impact. But the next couple of years, I still think it's about the rollout and initial adoption.
Absolutely, and certainly seeing the long-term use is also part of that equation. Tell me about the sector overall. Healthcare this year has had an interesting ride. Aside from GLP-1s, what would you have to say about how the sector performed this year?
We started this year, it's interesting, really worried about rotation into technology, and that turned out to be, pretty accurate. I mean, we stuck with the higher growth names as our favorite stocks. So, Lilly and Merck, are the two of the faster growers in pharma. Vertex in a mid-cap BioMarin in the biotech end of things. And those are still names that we're sort of sticking with here. I just haven't seen a lot of interest in the value kind of stocks that, are or maybe have a revenue or earnings declines on the back of patent expiration. So it's been a tougher year for the, Pfizer's and Bristol's and AbbVie's of the world. I don't know if that necessarily changes next year, right? I don't think people are going to be digging into value stocks and kind of turnaround stocks quite yet. I still think that growth is going to be mostly in favor looking to next year, and just stocks that have a real story, a real narrative, and clearly GLP-1s are just dominating that today.